Right, so what we're going to look at in this video is VTP. So that's VLAN Trunking Protocol, and it's a proprietary system by Cisco. Basically, they own it. All right. And what VTP is, and it is really simple to set up, is the ability to have a server switch. Okay, so it's a switch that we designate as a server, and every VLAN we create on this switch will be propagated to a client switch. Okay, so there's three main modes in VTP. There's the server, there's transparent, which we'll talk about in a second, and there's client. As I say, the server one is where if you create a VLAN, it'll be propagated down to another client switch. So the advantage is, let's say you had 10 switches and 50 VLANs. Every time you create a VLAN on this server switch, it'll go down to all of your client switches. Now, the flip side of that is the potential issue is if you delete a VLAN from your server switch, it will delete it from all your client switches. So you've got to be very, very careful. Now, a transparent switch, that is a switch that might be in the same network as these switches, but does not have VLANs propagated down to it. It contains its own VLAN database. However, let's say that was connected there and that was connected there. A transparent switch will still pass that propagation VTP information on to this client switch. It will still pass it down. This client will still get all the VLANs it needs. All right. So what we'll do is we'll actually run through this. So we'll configure a VTP server. We'll configure a VTP client. We'll add some VLANs to it, and the connections in between the switches must be trunks for this VTP information to be passed down them. All right. So it's fairly straightforward. It won't take us long. Let me just turn off the pen tool and we'll crack on. So let's open our server switch. So if you haven't done already, just drop 3 2960s on the page. We'll open this first switch. So these are totally unconfigured switches. So I'll just open the CLI. Just get that. There we go. What we'll do is we need to go into enable mode. Config T, because we want to make a configuration change. Now by default, all switches are VTP servers, but they haven't got a VTP domain, which we need to set up, and they haven't got a VTP password, which we can use to secure that domain. So just to prove point, VTP mode server, this device is basically already a server. So let's create a domain. So you just do VTP domain, and then you give it whatever you want to call it. Now this is case sensitive, so every client that you want in this domain must have this down to the same case as well. So we'll just put Cisco with a capital C. Then we want to set our VTP password, which again is case sensitive. So VTP password, and I'm just going to set it to Cisco for ease. Now obviously you want a domain that makes sense to name wise, what you want to call it, and you need a password that is secure to add the other devices to this domain. That is all we need to do to configure VTP server on this switch. So we're just going to close that for a second. We might as well do a transparent switch as well. I'm not going to bother resizing the window this time. Enable, config T. Now all we need to do on this one is VTP mode transparent. Okay, hit enter to that. It has changed it to a transparent switch. Let's close that for a second. Let's go to our final switch. And again, enable mode, config T. And this time we need to do VTP mode client. So it's changed it from a server to a client. We then need to add it to the domain. So all we do is VTP domain. And remember, it must be exactly the same as what you set on the server switch. So Cisco, VTP password, Cisco. And just before we do anything else, what I'm going to do is do show VLAN just to prove it has no VLANs other than the defaults. All right. So we'll close that. Go back to our server. And we'll just create a couple of VLANs. So VLAN 10. Let's call this sales. VLAN 20. Let's call this marketing. All right, just exit out of that. Okay, so if we just do show VLAN, there's our 2 VLANs we've created on the server switch. Right, now, as I said before, we do need to have this connection between the switches, and it does need to be a trunk. So what we'll do is we'll just open this up, grab a cable, and we'll do O1 to O1. And just for ease, so I can remember the numbers, I'm going to do O2 to O2. Right, fast forward a bit. So if we go back into our server, oops, there we go, config T, int FA0/1, switch port mode trunk. All right, close that a second. Head into this transparent one that's in the middle. Now this is the connection from the transparent one to the client, and that was on int FA0/2. Oops, spelled it right. Switch port mode trunk. So now both of these lines are set as trunks. Let's hit fast forward a bit. If we open up our client again, so this is the client switch, and we do show VLAN. There's our two VLANs we created on the server switch. So basically, we haven't got any VLANs on this transparent one. Alright, because it just passed them on. So as soon as we made these trunks, that VTP advertisement was able to get through to our client, and our client was able to accept those changes. I wonder if, let's just have a look, see if Packet Tracer shows you this. So if we do show VTP, it does. So what you can do, you can also do show VTP status. Tell you what, if you don't do show VTP twice, there we go. And it'll tell you about the number of VLANs and stuff like that that are in this. Now, if you're troubleshooting this, because maybe your client's not getting your server VLANs, your configuration revision number on the server must be higher than the client. Now, if you find that for some reason that's got out of order and the client for some reason has a higher revision number than your server, is no longer taking updates, what you can do is set the client to transparent, then back to client, and that will reset that configuration number. Okay? The other thing to make sure is that your lines are trunks. And that's pretty much it, short of making sure you spelt your domain correctly and your password correctly with the same case sensitivity. It is a super simple protocol. It's quite easy to work out, quite easy to set out. Whether you need it in your network is a different matter, but it is something you should know about. If you found this video helped you at all, hit like, hit subscribe, and then we'll probably cover some more Cisco stuff in some later videos.